seconds, and Tyler Shepardson is off and rolling with this week's episode of OTP.
Is this where the damn drumming and the music kicks in?
Yeah. Thing on? Can you guys hear what I'm saying? Is this recorded? Where's the recording? It's been so long since we've done an episode of On the Pipe podcast. I think I forgot how to record the dang things, but here we are. Just a little bit late, just a little bit far behind, but don't even worry about it. Today is Friday, December 4th, 2020. I'm your host, as always, Tyler Shepardson, and this is a long overdue episode of On the Pipe podcast. So, went on Instagram Live last night, did a little bit of chat with whoever was around to catch it. So, appreciate you guys if you were on the feed. We kind of talked through some stuff and talked about what was going on, and I just wanted to record a show, get it back out there in the open. Our last show that we did was when Stu Baylor came back from his knee injury on a brand new bike on 3 days' notice and won the GNCC overall. We did an interview with Stu about how the race went. It was the most downloaded show that I have ever done. It broke the record, my personal record, for the most downloads in the night that I posted it, and then it broke the record for the most downloads in a 24-hour period, and it is now by far the most downloaded show that I've ever done. So how do I follow up such a great, successful show like that? That's exactly right. We go like 2 months without recording a show at all. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm like this, but here we are. We're back in your life. A lot has happened since our last show. The conclusion of all the series wrapped up. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff that has happened between then and now. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to our friends over at Armored Graphics. They launched. I can't talk today. They launched their new website a little while back. We did a show about it with one of the owners, Paul Sajak. We kind of talked about that. You can check them out, armoredgraphics.com. Follow them on social medias at Armored Graphics. They got a lot of really cool graphics going on over there. So just want to say a big thank you to them for sticking with us and being with us since the very beginning. That being said, right after the Stu episode aired, I think it was the next week. I ended up getting COVID, the Rona. I got it. I'm a survivor. Against the 0.02% odds, though, I prevailed and I survived. I am a survivor of COVID-19. So it kind of zapped me a little bit. The symptoms weren't too bad. I don't think I was as sick as like having the flu, but the lethargic feeling, the tired feeling, the zap of energy, that was pretty significant, but I would say that was about the worst that it got. I had a headache for a few days, but then I was just tired. I slept a lot during the middle of the day. I always just felt weak and tired for about a week, honestly. Lost my taste and smell. First of all, that is a whole different ballgame. Whenever I heard people saying that they lost their taste and smell from COVID, I was like, that's got to be an exaggeration. Like, you probably just can't taste as well or smell as good. But, nope, you lose it, 100%. My nose was not stuffed up at all. My nose was just like it is right now, but I could not smell a thing, and I could not taste a thing. It was actually the weirdest thing ever. That's how I found out I got it. I was eating a spicy chicken sandwich. Bit into it. That's weird. Can't taste this. Dumped hot sauce all over it. All over the damn thing. Took another bite. That's weird. I still can't taste it. Took a swig of a Coca-Cola that I had. Yes, I know. Very healthy diet over here. And it tasted like water. And by that, I mean it didn't have a taste. So that's how I knew instantly that I was COVID positive. So that did happen the week after our last episode. little bit zapped on that following week, and then the next week I was even more tired, so I didn't do a show then. The following week after that, I don't know what happened the week after that, but then the week after that, there was 8 more cases of COVID at my work, including all of our field managers. I'm a safety director for a telecom company, for those that listen a lot. So with all of our field managers out, I kind of had to step in and do a lot of running around. So that week, I just got super busy, and I wasn't able to find time to do the show, really. But it seems like there was a series of unfortunate events, and then it got to the point where I hadn't done it in so long that I just kept pushing it off, because I have so much to talk about, I don't even know where to begin. And since I didn't know where to begin, I never began. So I do apologize, but I've said it a million times before. I want to be back. I want these shows to be consistent. I want them to come out. Thank you to each and every one of you that have reached out and inquired about a show, wondered where the shows are, asked for a show. Stuff like that goes a really long way. That really means a lot to me, so I really appreciate that for those listeners and supporters out there. That is what really gives me the fuel to keep this thing going. I haven't made a dime off of this podcast. I haven't really gotten anything from this podcast. This podcast costs me money every single month between the website and the hosting service to put the shows out on iTunes and Spotify and iHeartRadio, everywhere that they are. It costs me money each month. So really this thing costs me money. And each time or each week that I go without doing a show costs me money. And so that means me not doing a show is me paying for something that I'm not using. And I don't know, you guys don't want to hear about my financial stuff, but basically I need to start doing more shows, and I really like that people did miss them and want them and reached out about them, because at the end of the day, that's what keeps me going. I haven't made any money on this, but the fact that so many people have listened to this show, and the fact that so many people grew accustomed to seeing these shows come out and recognized when there wasn't shows coming out, that's what I do this for. This really started out as nothing more than a couple fans just trying to bench race and talk. And so I'm really grateful to where it is now, regardless of money. Because money aside, I just love dirt bikes. And I love talking about dirt bikes. And more importantly, I want to bring a centralized area for you to get all of your off-road news. Supercross and motocross, they have a million different outlets. We are the leading source for off-road, and that is what I'm continuing to try to do. I want you to be able to tune into us and know what's going on in the dirt bike world, what the gossip is, who's winning races, who's signing with teams, who's getting fired from teams, who got hurt. That's the goal of this podcast. And so thank you to each and every one of you that are listening to the show right now. I sincerely appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. And yes, that was a pretty easy way to blame not doing a show on COVID, just like everything else in this world that's happening that's getting blamed on COVID. But there is a lot of stuff that has happened, and we're going to try to dig into it the absolute best that we can. First and foremost, and this just sparked my interest, I'm going to try not to jump all around and ramble, but you guys know that's kind of what I do at this point. But I'm going to try to keep it to a minimum so that way you can all follow along with what we're talking about. But talking back to being the number one source in off-road, one of the coolest things that has happened during this show, during this period that we've been doing this show, is in this month's issue of Racer X Magazine. Racer X Magazine is the biggest magazine in all of dirt bike and dirt bike related things. Racer X Magazine is owned by Racer Productions, which is owned by MX Sports. MX Sports owns the world. MX Sports owns Loretta Lynn's. They own ATV Motocross. They own GNCC. They own Pro Outdoors. They own Ricky Carmichael Supercross. What else? I know I'm missing some stuff. They rule the roost. They are the powerhouses. They control the industry. They are the leading source of dirt bike related content. And they've done a really good job of doing it. And they've been doing it for a really long time. What I'm getting at with that is MX Sports was founded by Big Dave Coombs. He's the one that started up Loretta Lynn's and basically started up that whole company. Now his son Davey Coombs, who is the son, let me get this right. So the son of Rita Coombs. Rita Coombs is Big Dave's wife. I guess widow. Would that be the right word? Because Big Dave passed away. So does that make her the widow or the widower? I think she's a widow. Anyway, her daughter is Carrie Jo Russell, who helps run the series. Carrie Jo Russell is married to Jeff Russell, who is Caleb Russell's dad, and also a former National Enduro champion, Jeff Russell is. So Jeff Russell is the head trail boss at GNCC, and that whole family runs MX Sports. I hope I'm getting that right. So Davey Coombs has a lot to do with all of it, and he writes an article at the beginning of each Racer X magazine called Reason for Being. It's kind of like the preamble to the magazine and lets you know what's going on in the world of off-road. Now, I know I'm beating around the bush, and I know that I went with a lot of lead up to get to this, but in this month's issue of Racer X magazine, they were writing about podcasts. One of the topics that came up was podcasts, and he was just kind of going through all the different shows that you can catch up on Supercross and Motocross. I mean, he's talking about DMXS with Kevin Kelly and David Iser. He's talking about David Pingree and Grant Langston. They do Whiskey Throttle show. Talk about Don Almeida and Swap Moto Live. And then they were even talking about Ricky Carmichael and Jeff Emig hosting their podcast. And now you're wondering, what does that have to do with this? Well, I'll tell you. The very next sentence after he mentions Ricky Carmichael and Jeff Emig, it says, and if off-road is your thing, check out Tyler Shepherdson's On the Pipe podcast wherever you find your shows. And if off-road is your thing, check out Tyler Shepherdson's On the Pipe podcast wherever you find your shows. That is 20 words. 20 words were written in this month's Racer X magazine. And that is one of the coolest things that has ever happened to me with this show. And really one of the coolest things that's happened to me in my life. Because this show started out in a spare bedroom with a couple guys in Gaston County just wanting to see what would happen. And my old co-host, Devin Byram, you guys all know him. He's been on the show several times since then. And he was in all the beginning episodes as the co-host of the show. And he's a lot of the reason why this show exists. We just started it for fun. And now to see where it's come and where it's grown to and how many people listen, and to be able to track like how many different countries have downloaded this podcast and how many people and thousands of downloads that there's been for this podcast absolutely blows my mind. But when I was sent a picture of this article in Racer X magazine, it made me stop for a second. And think, because this started out, and this is by no means a professional production. I try my best to do what I can with what I have. I really want to step the production value up, and I want to make it more professional, but this is by no means a professional podcast. I try to make it professional. I like I said, I got decent equipment. I don't have a setup like Pulp MX. I don't have a setup like Joe Rogan. I don't have a setup like any of the other guys mentioned in that article. I mean, right now I'm sitting on a couch in my living room at a coffee table with a microphone on top of my laptop recording this. So I hope it does come off pretty well for you guys. I hope you guys enjoy listening to it. I hope you can bear the quality of it. Even when we do call-ins, I try to make it to where you can hear it, but I haven't dumped thousands of dollars in equipment. And to see my name, and not just my name, OTP's name, in Racer X magazine, the sentence after Ricky Carmichael and Jeff Emig, and things like Swap Moto Live and Whiskey Throttle Radio and Pulp MX, those guys all cover motocross and supercross. I cover off-road. And Davey Coombs himself wrote in the article, took it upon himself to write in that article, that if off-road is your thing, check out Tyler Shepherdson's On the Pipe podcast. I've never talked to Davey Coombs. I've worked for Racer TV several times now. I helped announce some of the shows this year, the live shows for GNCCs. I've never met Davey Coombs. I've never talked to Davey Coombs. I had no idea that Davey Coombs knew who I was. And he mentioned me by name and this podcast by name and shouted it out as the source for your off-road content. That blows my mind. That means even more people are listening to this thing than I thought. And it means the absolute world to me. And I thank each and every single one of you that have listened as well, because without you all, there would be no podcast. If I was sitting here talking to myself, which I guess in theory I actually am sitting here talking to myself, but if there's no one listening, then it wouldn't have continued. And the fact that there is people listening, and the fact that it led to the point of getting recognition by Davey Coombs to write about it in Racer X Magazine, the biggest publication for dirt bike racing, it blows my mind. And it's an honor that even with this long-winded thing that no one cares about, it's something that I can't convey how meaningful it really is to me, just given the circumstances. I mean, there's two people on their payroll. There's two people on their payroll that are doing quote-unquote shows about the same things that I'm doing shows about. Now, one of them does copy every single thing that I do, and whatever happens on the Pipe podcast, you can rest assured that within a month it's going to be on their show. But those two people are on the payroll over there. They weren't mentioned in the article. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't mean that to sound condescending or anything like that. It's just, it blows my mind that of all the things out there, On the Pipe podcast was the one that was mentioned. And for that, I'm so grateful. I try to bring you all the most news that I can. I try to do it as unbiased as possible. I try to do it in a way that's engaging and interesting. I mean, just going through this year, and this is another thing. So once things started happening the way that they did, when I first started up, when Devin and I started, we were the only podcast or show, whatever you want to call it, that was covering East Coast off-road. Since then, there has been a few more shows start up and taking the same exact blueprint. Imitation is the best form of flattery. That's why I said I didn't mean that condescending. I didn't mean it degrading. In my mind, that means that we're doing something right. If someone wants to copy literally everything that we're doing and try to make their own show out of it, that means we're doing something right. And I take gratitude and honor in that someone saw what we were doing and saw the opportunity to do it themselves, and so they kind of did what we were doing. This year, I kind of changed it up. With OTP Tuesdays, we were also the first and only show on Tuesdays at the time, which isn't the case now. But when OTP Tuesday started, my goal was, all right, let's turn this into news. We can't sit down and talk with people and do long-form interviews every single week, but what we can do is cover all the races for the weekend. And that is when OTP Tuesday started this year. So throughout the year, when I first started this thing, I said that I never want to do call-ins because it takes the personal aspect and the intimacy of a conversation away. But when we're doing the OTP Tuesdays and we're talking about topical stuff, what's going on right now, that's when we started doing the call-ins and having, for a while, 2 to 3, sometimes even 4 interviews a week. And from January this year until May of this year, I more than doubled the downloads that OTP had in the 3 years prior, which is absolutely insane, which also shows that doing something right. It's something that people want to hear. Just this year, I mean, we've had Ben Kelly, Jonathan Johnson, Josh Guffey, Ricky Russell, Stu Baylor's been on a few times, Josh Strang has been on a couple times, Becca Sheets, Mike Wachowski, Craig DeLong, Jared Bolton, Brody Johnson, Johnny G, Jordan Ashburn, Mackenzie Tricker, Jason Rains. It's crazy. We've had a lot of big names on here and a lot of people that are out there battling and winning championships. I mean, those are former champions, and those are champions from this year that have been on the show this year. And for that, I'm so grateful, and I think it's awesome. And I'm definitely rambling at this point, but I just dropped my phone on my computer and it messed everything up. So just checking on that. But the point that I'm getting at is that it's never been about me. It's never been about this podcast even. It's been about off-road. It's been about giving these riders that are at the top of their game in the world a platform, giving them exposure, giving them some other ways to get their names, to get their stories, to get their results out there to the world, to get their sponsors in front of more and more people, which in turn brings more value to them as racers. It was never about making sure everyone heard this or making sure everyone knew what On the Pipe podcast was for the sake of On the Pipe podcast. It's to grow the exposure of our sport. I hate to say it this way, but Caleb Russell is the most dominant champion in GNCC history. I don't know if that's true because Eddie Lojak has more championships than him. But let me just use this as an example. Caleb Russell has won more races than anyone else in history. He just won 8 straight championships in GNCC racing. This is the largest series in the world against the best competition in the world. Caleb Russell just won it 8 times in a row. Think about if a Super Bowl, or an NFL team won 8 Super Bowls in a row. Think about if an NBA team won 8 championships in a row. Think about if a NASCAR driver won 8 championships in a row. Think about Supercross. Think about if someone came out, look at when Dungey won 3 in a row, 4 in a row, Villapoto won 4 in a row. Look at these. Now imagine if someone went out and won Supercross 8 years in a row. If Eli Tomac goes out and wins 7 more after his one last year, they'd be a superstar. In any sport, they would be a superstar. Caleb is absolutely a superstar when he's around the races, when he's at a Sprint Enduro, when he's at a National Enduro, when he's at an ISDE even, when he's at a GNCC. He's a superstar. That being said, Caleb Russell could go to your local Walmart and probably go shopping and get everything he needs without a mask on. That was just a COVID reference there. Caleb Russell probably wears a mask. He's very responsible. He's very respectful. But for the sake of this story, go in a Walmart without a mask on, probably wearing an FMF KTM hat, and in all likelihood might not get recognized by a single person in there. And that's a problem. That's a problem. In my mind, that is a problem. Josh Strang is a former GNCC champion. Josh Strang is an ISDE world champion. Josh Strang is a full gas sprint enduro champion. Same thing. He could be wearing a Monster Energy shirt going out to dinner. And no one, it's just, if you see Eli Tomac, I feel like people, and even still, I guess I'm going down a rabbit hole because Eli Tomac could probably do the same thing. He could probably go in a Walmart himself and not be recognized. Cooper Webb probably go anywhere he wants, not be recognized. But the point is that for what these riders do, for what they put their bodies through, for the level that they get at, it's absolutely absurd to me the lack of exposure that there is. So that has been what I've wanted to do this whole time. And I know that every single one of these riders that I've mentioned have a way bigger following than me right now. All I'm trying to do is offer a way to get their stories out and to have a platform. And I guess the roundabout sort of thing that I'm getting at is Davey Coombs taking notice and writing that in RacerX magazine. Now people that don't typically know anything about off-road, they're going to read through that and they're going to see it and they might check out On the Pipe podcast. And then that might bring more fans over to the sport. That's getting the name of off-road out into the world, out into the wild. If there was no off-road podcast, there would be no mention of off-road in that article or in that section of Racer X when they're talking about all the other podcasts. So that's just one little win along the way of on the way to the goal that we set out to do as far as getting more exposure to off-road and getting more eyes on the sport. And I think that is absolutely awesome. And that's why that means so much to me. And that's why I'm so grateful that we were thrown into the mix with that. I think it's really cool. And I guess that's all I got to say about that. We ended up going on a long-winded rant there. But since then, since the last time that we spoke, since the last time I did a show, as I mentioned earlier, every single championship has been wrapped up. We'll go through them real quick. GNCC, Caleb Russell gets it done, wraps it up two rounds early, wins his 8th straight GNCC championship. Craig DeLong, a perennial front runner in that XC2 class for 5+ years now, grabs his first XC2 championship. That was cool to see. Very stoked for Craig DeLong. Mike Wachowski was right on his heels though, and he was there all year long. And I think we saw a big step up from Mike Wachowski. Jonathan Gerard, he did a excellent job this year as well. He was actually leading the points before he got hurt. So a great battle that came down to the wire for those 3 riders. But it was Craig DeLong that grabs the XC2 championship. Zach Hayes grabs an XC3 championship. So him and Jason Raines battled back and forth all year for that one, but Zach Hayes edged him out and grabbed the XC3 championship. And then for the first time since Taylor Jones has came to America 4 seasons ago, Becca Sheets took the championship from her. So Taylor won 3 in a row. She ended up getting hurt this year, so she didn't compete at the last couple rounds, but she was there watching. But Becca Sheets, who was the last champion before Taylor Jones came over, just won another championship. So her second WXC championship. And that was after a big bike change and everything for her this year, switching to that Yamaha from a KTM. So that was awesome for her as well to see that. So those were your GNCC champions. National Enduro wrapped up. Going into the final round on a brand new machine as well, Grant Baylor on that Factory 1 Sherco had to finish 11th place or better to wrap up his first ever National Enduro Championship. He went out there and won the damn thing. So Grant Baylor clinched that National Enduro Championship and brought Sherco their first major East Coast off-road championship. Now, they did wrap up some hard enduro championships throughout this season, but that was their first national enduro title, and I would say that's a very prestigious title to take home. So Grant Baylor, obviously with the things that happened with his brother Stu on that same exact team, I'm sure that there was a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that no one is even going to ever come close to understanding the full extent of, but nevertheless, awesome for Grant Baylor to go out there against everything, against being on a new bike, against helping develop that bike as they go on the fly. He goes out there and wins that National Enduro Championship, grabs his first one, which Grant's been the guy to beat at National Enduros for a couple years now, and even Stu said that himself. So that was a tight battle, and that will continue to be a tight battle going into years moving forward. Stu, as we know, has 4 National Enduro Championships. Grant now has 1. And next year, Grant will be running that number 1 plate, and I'm sure Stu will be trying to make it 5, while Grant is trying to go back-to-back. Pro 2, it was Craig DeLong, who we mentioned earlier. He grabbed the Pro 2 championship as well, so he's been the guy to beat on a 250 in the tight woods and the open stuff. He is your XC2 champion, and he is your Pro 2 National Enduro champion after making the move up to the Rockstar Energy Husqvarna factory team this year, which we spoke with him right after that happened to hear about how that worked out. And it looked like it worked out pretty well as he goes home with 2 different national number 1 plates for the year. And then Mackenzie Tricker backs up her National Enduro Championship from last year, makes it 2 in a row, grabbing the number 1 plate in the women's elite class at the National Enduros. The Canada Full Gas Sprint Enduro Series wrapped up as well. Last year, we were talking about how Caleb Russell was the first ever repeat champion or 2-time Sprint Enduro champion. He backs that up, makes it 3. So 2 in a row, 3 total championships for Caleb Russell in the Sprint Enduro Series. That was really cool to see. Our Pro 2 champion was Johnny Gerard, who, as I mentioned, was in the contention for that XC2 championship before getting hurt. But he wrapped up the Full Gas Championship a few rounds early. I think 3 rounds early. And he did that when he was hurt. And he still went out there and won and wrapped that championship up. And then our Pro-Am class came down to the wire as well. It was won on the very last day of the season. Cole Madison was your Pro-Am champion at the Full Gas Sprint Enduro Series. He's always been very good in that sprint format. He's always been very good at sprinting, period, no matter where he's at. So it was cool to see him put together a solid year. After missing an entire weekend, he still came out and won the last round and the championship. So that was cool to see Cole Madison come back and get that. I'm sure it had to make him feel really good, and hope that we'll see some more out of him next year. In our women's pro class over at the Sprint Enduros, it was Taylor Jones that wrapped that one up. So Taylor, for 3 years in a row, let me make sure I get this right. For 2 years in a row, she won all 3 championships. So Taylor Jones, her first 2 years, she won GNCC, National Enduro, and Sprint Enduro. And then the third year, last year, 2018, she won GNCC and she won Full Gas. But as we mentioned, Mackenzie Tricker won National Enduro because Taylor broke a lot of bones in her hands and fingers, and so she missed a couple of the National Enduros last year. But then this year, the 3 major East Coast championships were split, with Mackenzie Tricker taking the National Enduro win, Becca Sheets taking the GNCC win, and Taylor Jones taking the Sprint Enduro, the Full Gas Sprint Enduro win. So just further proof at how competitive that WXC class has gotten and how much they are all pushing each other there, and will continue to push each other. 2 of those girls, so Taylor and Mackenzie, both went under the knife for ACL surgery, so they both had knees fixed. And as we just found out in the past couple of days, Mackenzie Tricker actually had an issue with her heart and had heart surgery and got that fixed. So now she's rehabbing from both an injured knee and a heart surgery. Taylor Jones looks to be recovering really well from a knee surgery. She was walking and doing squats like 2 weeks after surgery. Makes no sense to me, but she's doing it. But Becca Sheets, as far as I know, she's been kind of laying low and off the radar, but seems to be riding, and I don't think there's any major changes or many issues for her. So it's going to be a competitive class next year. I think Rachel Goodish, we saw her get her first GNCC win. She wrapped up the Hard Enduro Women's Championship. There was one weekend she raced the Battle of the Goats on a Saturday, won the damn thing, drove overnight to Ohio, and won the damn National Enduro the next day. So Rachel Goodish has always been one that the mental strength is obviously there, but I think she did have a knee surgery or had something going on with her knee, but she will be back and in contention next year. That WXC class, that women's pro class, no matter where they're at, it's growing and it's getting competitive, and I'm excited to watch it. I think that's one of the exciting ones to watch, for sure. Let's see, what else do we have going on? I got a list of notes here, trying to figure out what I have and haven't talked about. It was cool to see the wrap-up of the end of the year. We got a little bit of silly season stuff going on. I know it's a little bit too early to call right now, but some of the early stuff that we're hearing, obviously I think the big change is Johnny Gerard is going to be moving over to that gas rig. For those that haven't heard or were out of the loop, I think they actually made a public announcement about the gas team, but the Coastal Racing Husqvarna team is taking on that gas effort, and they will now be the Coastal Racing Factory gas team. Ricky Russell, who was riding for Coastal Racing this year before he was injured, he's making the move over to gas, and then Jonathan Gerard, Johnny G, the Ripper, is going to be making the move from the KTM tent over to the red KTM tent. So Johnny Gerard and Ricky Russell will be the pilots in the Coastal Racing gas rig. I believe Jonathan is still racing XC2 next year, and Ricky Russell will be competing in the XC1 class. Obviously, both of them will be on gas machines. What I'm hearing right now is that Andrew DeLong, who we saw racing for Phoenix Honda last year, from what I am hearing, I think Andrew DeLong will be taking the second bike at the Sherco, the Factory One Sherco team. So, like I said, I'm hearing that through the grapevine, not necessarily reporting it, just letting you know what I've heard. So, right now it sounds like Andrew Long's going to Sherco. Brody Johnson, who is also on that Phoenix Racing Honda team, he's going to Land Mills Husqvarna. I know it's definitely a Husqvarna. I'm pretty sure it's the Land Mills Husqvarna. But that leaves the question to what's going to happen with Phoenix Honda. Are they going to have an off-road team next year? Because Andrew DeLong is no longer with them. Brody Johnson is no longer with them. And Jonathan Johnson splitted ways with them in the middle of the season and ended up racing whatever bike that he could find each weekend. So what's going to happen with that Phoenix Racing Husky team? I always say Phoenix Racing Husky. Phoenix Racing Honda. Wonder what's going to happen with that Phoenix Racing Honda team. Have absolutely no idea. There was reports with Jordan Ashburn riding a Honda, thinking it was going to be the Phoenix Racing Honda. I don't believe that is coming to fruition. I think that we'll see Jordan Ashburn on a Husqvarna next year. Don't know what team, but that's what I've heard as well, that we'll see Jordan Ashburn on a Husqvarna next year, which would be cool. They have a lot more bike options, and I think one place where Jordan Ashburn really excels at is hard enduro racing. He almost got a top 10 on a 1999 KDX 200. So I think if he gets a deal with a Husqvarna, even back with Beta, which I don't think is even in the question, but just some manufacturer that has an off-road or a hard enduro type bike, like a modern 300 two-stroke, I think Jordan Ashburn would be very well suited to split time between, say, GNCC full gas and hard enduro racing. That's something that I would like to see. I'm pretty sure that Jordan would like to do that as well. Not sure. Haven't talked to him. Don't know anything about it. But I think that if we do see him on a Husqvarna, that it will be a good opportunity for him to be able to grab a 300 and go race some hard enduro events. Because if he can compete on a 99 KDX 200 with stock front forks, with all the fork lug overhang, imagine what he can do on a modern bike. So I think that would be cool. And also, Jordan Ashburn's one of the nicest people that you could ever come in contact with. He and his wife, Mary, they're both two of the nicest people I've ever met. So Jordan's got plenty left in the tank. He is a very competitive guy. He's a podium guy. He was right there on the bubble all year long this year in both the Full Gas Enduro Series and the GNCC Series. So we have not seen the last of Jordan Ashburn. I think we'll see him next year on a Husqvarna. Corey Buttrick is going to be back racing full-time next year on a factory beta. That has been made public. They released their statement on that. So Corey Buttrick, done deal. He will be on a factory racing beta machine. Glad to see him back. The last time we saw him putting in a full-time effort was the year before last. He came out. He was on a Enduro Engineering Husqvarna before Ricky Russell got hurt, and so Corey was filling in over there at the Ampro Yamaha rig, and then as soon as Ricky came back, Corey was dropped. Did not plan out the way that he wanted it to. I was kind of bummed for him in that scenario too, because he had already gained some points at the Sprint Enduros and then was told he couldn't race the Sprint Enduros, and turned into this big thing where I ended up giving up all of his points at the Full Gas Sprint Enduros to fill in on that Yamaha ride, and then didn't have the Yamaha ride for the rest of the year. So Corey Buttrick, another super nice guy, super cool guy. Glad to see him back and with some factory support, and I'll be excited to see what he can do next year. Trevor Bollinger, he's back riding and racing. Thad Duvall, he's back riding and racing. Both of them raced the last GNCC, which was really cool to see and definitely a good sign. I feel like I'm missing someone. Stu Baylor's Yamaha deal is done. Stu Baylor will remain on an Ampro Yamaha for next year. And other than that, I think everyone is staying the same. Josh Strang will be on a Babaton line, Monster Energy Factory Kawasaki. I think Lane Michael will be rejoining the Ampro Yamaha team as well. And as far as the front row guys, Josh Toth and Ben Kelly, they will both be staying with the factory KTM team. And if I'm missing someone, I sincerely apologize. Grant Baylor. I believe Grant Baylor's staying with Sherco. I haven't heard anything one way or the other, but I believe Grant Baylor is staying with Sherco. And it's going to be a tough XC1 class next year. It's going to be a tough squad. Everyone's going to be back as of right now, knock on wood. There are no injuries. So it'll be cool to see a healthy front row at the races, at any race. So that's going to be pretty cool. I'm getting a little long-winded now. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Basically, just wanted to pop on here, kind of touch base. We got some cool stuff lined up in the future. Taylor Jones is top of the list. She is priority to have a show with her. I want to sit down and do a full episode with her. Perhaps one of the best women to ever ride a motorcycle ever. She's like a 38-time ISDE world champion. As we mentioned, she has had a dominant run in the U.S. so far. I got a lot of questions for her, and can't wait to talk with her. Other than that, we've talked to Ryan Sipes. We got something lined up with Josh Strang. Also, a couple other names that are pretty surprising. We'll have those people on, but I'm planning to hit it. Thank you guys for sticking with me. Really appreciate it. Want to continue to grow OTP. I want to continue to grow the podcast, and I want to continue to grow this outlet that these riders have to get their voices out there, to get to know more about them. So with that being said, if there is someone out there that you find interesting, you want to know more about, shoot me a message, shoot them a message, tag it in a post, comment on one of the posts. If you have suggestions of people that you would like to hear on the show, let me know, let them know, let us know, and we'll try to make it happen, because that's what we're trying to do, is let you guys get to know these people personally, and I think it's pretty cool. So that is the goal. A couple other things to hit. Caleb Russell got a whole ass bike named after him. There is a Caleb Russell edition KTM 350 XCF. I think that's one of the coolest things that happened to anybody in off-road. It's a factory edition Caleb Russell edition KTM. You can go buy a factory edition Caleb Russell bike. I think that's absolutely sick. JGR, Joe Gibbs Racing. It was the Auto Trader, Yoshimura, Joe Gibbs Racing factory Suzuki team. It's a mouthful to say. They folded. That really sucks. That is a big hit to the industry. They were the factory Suzuki team. They were factory Yamaha before they switched to Suzuki. They're right here in Charlotte. They're right down the road. We had a few people from the team on the show in the past. John Basher was on here. Kyle Peters was on here. Paul Sachak with Armor Graphics. They did all the graphics for the JGR team. They've been on here. So it sucks to see a team going under in a time where bike sales and power sport sales and gear is at an all-time high. It's a shame that there wasn't someone to step in and sponsor that team and save it. So that's taking rides out of the industry. People are trying to make a living riding a dirt bike. Now they have less opportunities to do so with that team going under. I mean, there's a time where JGR was fielding 6 bikes. That's 6 riders, 6 people making a living riding a dirt bike. And now people aren't going to have that opportunity, at least not with the JGR team. And that's a little bit of a bummer to see. You would like to see these folks reinvesting money back into the sport and keeping that JGR team afloat. Unfortunately, things couldn't work out with them finding a title sponsor. And I believe that is the main reason why they won't be returning in 2021. So nothing on Joe Gibbs Racing, just a really unfortunate circumstance to see. But yeah, we're going to continue to bring you news. If anything happens, anything develops, I'll be checking in on here, letting you know what's going on. If you have any questions, by all means, shoot me a message. Let me know what questions that you have. We're going to try to get some shows lined up, get some people on here, and yeah, that's going to do it. Thank you guys once again for listening. Make sure you go follow us at On The Pipe Podcast. If you like the show, if you like this show, go ahead and send it to a buddy, tell a friend, make a post, tag us in it. We'll reshare it in our story. Do whatever you need to do. If you do like these and you want to listen to more, please share it with a friend. Let them know that you like it, and hopefully we can gain a listener. But thank you to each and every single one of you. Check us out on thepipepodcast.com, and we'll see you on the next one.